Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Now, let's take you on a quick journey across the newspapers this morning, share with you the biggest stories making headlines across Nigeria. We're going to be starting on the Vanguard newspapers this morning. And, of course, the big story there says, Forex scarcity sends Naira tumbling to 930 Naira to the dollar. And it says there, BDCs lament dollar scarcity. Analysts disagree on involvement of BDCs. Parallel market premium widens as cost pressure may continue despite the reforms, says experts. BDCs, any BDC watching this money, I have $100 at home.
Give me now.
No. Academic records. We graduated in Chicago University in 1979. Tinubu's classmate speaks out. Yeah, that's a really funny story. But of course, on that one, just to quickly let everyone, our viewers know, there is still a court case in the United States by the PDP's candidate, Atiku Abubakar, of course, who was subpoenaed and is asking the Chicago State University to provide details of their graduating class of 1979, I believe, where the Nigerian president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and his certificate says that he graduated from. That case is still ongoing in the United States. I think yesterday or the day before, they were in court, and there were some very interesting, revelations there. So yeah, I'm not sure who this is, but it says that he graduated with the president in 1979. Ransom from kidnapping, fueling terrorism and banditry, says National Counterterrorism Center. $600 million trapped funds. Tinubu directs CBN to meet foreign airlines, and also Abidjan-Lagos Highway. ECOWAS moves to perfect design for project. Insecurity. Niger to reopen 11 public schools closed in 2021. And what else can we find here? Nigeria accounts for 30% global malaria burden, says the minister. And IGP declares killer of DPO, Bako in Rivers wanted. 100 days, economic reforms have made life more difficult, say financial experts. Yes, and of course, I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will say the same thing, not just economic experts. The Nigerians who are bearing the brunt of the current reforms in Nigeria's economy and the decisions made by the current administration will tell you exactly the same thing. And what else can we also quickly share here? I think these are the big stories on the Vanguard this morning. But the ransom from kidnapping, fueling terrorism, and banditry. That's an interesting one there, because Nigeria continues to, of course, battle insecurity and the likes, battle banditry, battle terrorist organizations, and everything. Nigerians, of course, have continued to demand some clarity as to what exactly continues to fuel these things. Is it kidnapping, ransoms? Are they still making enough money from kidnapping to fund, their organizations, to buy ammunition, and continue to keep it going? Is there some money being made from, of course, allegations have, emerged in the last couple of months, money being made from mining Nigeria's mineral resources, mining, of course, in Zamfara and the likes, the rivers in northern Nigeria also, and the fish farmers. They also still paying levies to these terror groups. The question really is how they are making their money. Well, these are the big stories on the Vanguard newspapers this morning, and we will move away from the Vanguard to the Daily Independent, see what we can find.
All right, on the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper, federal government asks CBN to meet airlines quarterly to resolve FX crisis. Whose investments into aviation sector with tax holidays. IATA laments Lagos, Abuja airports most expensive in Africa. Students kick as OAU jerks up fees by 300%. We're just talking about this morning. Schools that would potentially increase or are already having conversations about increasing. So first it was Unilag and now OAU by 300%. Sanwo-Olu swears in 37 cabinet members and reads the Riot Act. Reps refute claim of 100 million naira palliative to members. Says NLC lied. Court orders DSS and police protection for Kogi ADC gubernatorial candidate. Tinubu condoles Libya as flood death toll passes 5,100 in one city. We also would keep mentioning how our thoughts, our hearts and our prayers are with the people of Libya. It's a very tough time to be a Libyan, to live in Libya at the moment. It's really a very tough time for them there. 42 firms emerge successful bidders for Nigerian flare site development. federal government to expedite action on passage of water resources management bill. Two more stories. Proceeds of kidnapping being used to finance terrorism, and this is of course according to ONSA, that's Office of the National Security Advisor. And the final story on the Daily Independent: Nigeria's higher education landscape needs total overhaul. And this is according to the Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Maman. And this is a position that all of us agree with. It does need a total overhaul. We can't have what we have right now. I mean, you were talking about how education outside the country is a lot more expensive and education in Nigeria is a lot more subsidized. It is subsidized. First of all, if you are increasing if you increase the qualities, when you can then talk about increasing, that's not to say, of course, that the quality across board is really poor, but we cannot deny the fact that the quality can be better. Yep. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. If you judge from even our time in school, although yes, it's been a long time we've been out of school, but some of the challenges that we experienced whilst in school are the challenges that some of them are still experiencing many years later, and it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree.
The salaries of professors, have we even spoken about salaries of professors? And now they are one of the, in terms of the effort they've put into getting where they've gotten to, they don't deserve the salaries that they're receiving. Professors, lecturers, they don't deserve what they're receiving.
It almost feels like slavery to some extent, and I always, would argue that, professor basically has got to the peak of his career most times in the university sector, in the education sector, except you eventually go to get on to, be permanent secretary or become vice chancellor or something like that. But it's the peak of your career. And would we compare it to what judges, receive, who are, of course, reasonably at the peak of their careers also? It may not be a, perfect comparison, but, I'm sure you get the point that I'm trying to make. The university sector, the education sector generally across Nigeria needs a lot of work. Same thing with the health sector. Needs a lot of work, needs, a lot more investment, needs a lot more interest, by the government. Can we improve on the amount of, on the percentage that we dedicate to do these two sectors every year from our national budget? Can Nigeria even afford it? Because every time that we argue that we need to fund education better or fund infrastructure or fund healthcare, I always will say, can Nigeria afford it? And in my opinion, yes, we can. We just waste too much money on very, very frivolous things. And at the same time, there's so many leakages in government, federal, state, and local government level, that need to be blocked for the country to save money and redirect those funds into these sectors. Can we also, invest, in other aspects of money generation, in infrastructure, in electricity, in, tourism, and every other way that Nigeria as a country can make money? Yes, we can, but we're just not doing enough of that. And until we do that, it will continue to be a struggle to allocate money or more money to these aspects. I also want to just quickly mention, the part where the federal government asked CBN to meet airlines quarterly to resolve foreign exchange crisis. And of course, there's some other story that's, spoke of the president directing these things. And, I said it 2 days ago that we need to institutionalize some of these things. We don't need to wait for the federal government's directive or for the president's directive before these institutions move and do what they're supposed to do. But let's move away from the Daily Independent. Let's go to the Guardian newspapers this morning and see what we can find over there. It says there, high prices push government homes beyond average Nigerians' reach. And I saw that story. I'm going to quickly share what it says. It says there, despite the overwhelming gap in housing provision in the country, the federal government's 2,870 houses in different states are beyond the reach of low-income earners. It says the houses were constructed by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration through the former minister, Babatunde Fashola, under the National Housing Program. The government commenced 6,068 homes in 46 sites in 35 states, while 2,870 were completed. And of course, others are at different stages of completion. But it says here that among the projects, 83 units of 2- and 3-bedroom bungalows in Makurdi, of which 712 million was expended out of the 768 million set for the project. I'm trying to find where, how much it is per apartment in this story. It doesn't seem to show that. But yes, unfortunately, it's not, the report or the story doesn't really show. Okay, yes, it says, for instance, 1-bedroom house costs between 7.2 million and 9.2 million. 2-bedroom bungalows sell for 9.1 million and 12.3 million. Currently, the mortgage system remains a treacherous path for prospective homeowners, and their concerns by contributors to the National Housing Fund on the impact of the scheme. Anyway, it's just a further breakdown of how Nigerians cannot afford these things. So yes, just looking at the story now, it breaks down how much the houses are. 3-bedroom, of course, it ranges between 13 and 16 million. Minimum wage is 30,000 naira, so obviously that's not a person who can afford any of these houses. Number of poor people in Nigeria, 95.1 million, and only 10% of Nigerians that desire to own homes could afford it, says the CBN. All right. Less than 1% of unemployed youths benefit from government interventions. That's also on The Guardian. And also, SCIID Panti, how not to investigate, deter criminals. Not sure what that is about. 6 years after, Nigeria awards 49 gas flare sites to 42 investors. And also, federal government moves NIMC to Ministry of Interior as issued NINs hit 102.4 million. These are the big stories on the Guardian newspapers this morning, and very interesting stories, I must say. Let's move away from the Guardian this morning and see what we can find on the Punch newspapers.
All right, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, the big story is talking about a conversation we had in the first hour of the show. ASU parents protest as more varsities hike fees. Prevail on universities to reverse fee increase. PTA tells Tinubu fears mass dropout. Lecturers slam federal government over poor funding. Students will take to cybercrime, parents warn. Libya floods kills 6,000 victims buried in massive mass graves. That's really sad. Land grabbers, violent return to Lagos, leaves trail of blood and deaths. Oh, wow. So land grabbers, I think that would be what is popularly referred to as omonile.
Yeah.
And, I
Is
don't
it?
know.
Okay,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
yeah.
omonile. So typically if you buy, I don't know if that's still obtainable, but before now, if you bought a piece of land in Lagos State, you can't just come and start building, not just in Lagos State, different parts of the country. You can't just buy the land and start building. Even if you get all your, you've gotten your C of O, everything is intact, you have to settle them.
Yeah.
They will call it deve. They're paying development levy.
It's not just in Lagos yet, like you said, it's everywhere.
So you have to pay for that. So
yeah.
Apparently they've returned to Lagos. I don't know where they went to before, but that doesn't look good. And they're leaving a trail of blood and death. The things people will do for land is just amazing.
Yeah.
Just in case you did not know, Section 1 of the Land Use Act provides that all lands belong to the governor. So this land that you're killing someone for is not really your own, neither is it theirs. It is the governor's. The government can collect this land, right? It is primarily theirs. But that's another conversation for another day. One feared killed as flood wreaks havoc in Lagos Estate. That's not good. The flooding in the past few days have been wild. Anyway, Naira weakens to 950 Naira to the dollar. Forex scarcity worsens. Manufacturers slash output, jobs over Forex crisis. Slain soldiers, over 6,000 family members to get insurance claims. And the federal government predicts heavy rainfall and flooding in 48 towns. This is not the first time that we've heard about the prediction of the flooding. This was I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, talking about the flood predictions. And we're asking what is being done. Are we going to have another humanitarian crisis on our hands? The floods have not been looking good. But that's all that we could take this morning on the front pages of the newspapers.
I would quickly cheapen the story on, slain soldiers, over 6,000 family members to get insurance claims. I, would maybe also need to look deeper into what the process is like. 6,000 slain soldiers, and once again, the need to institutionalize these things, ensure that MDAs are working properly, ensure that you don't need to go cap in hand or you go and beg for things like your pension or your gratuities or your insurance claims, after, retirement or, after the death of a soldier.
Yeah.
Ensure that, these things work, through a system that doesn't require anybody to be bribed. Nigerian soldiers have been lost in their thousands, since the, different levels of the fight against insecurity started many years ago. From Boko Haram to ISWAP to bandits, to different names that we may not even be sure of. Do these family members, who of course have lost their sons and their husbands, deserve better? 100%. Do they deserve to wait for weeks, years, maybe, before they get the insurance that they are entitled to after the death of a soldier? They do not deserve that. And so I believe that these are some of the things that might also even encourage and motivate and boost the morale of Nigerian soldiers, and that includes also the Nigerian policemen, who, of course, die in the line of duty. It should not wait this long, and it shouldn't take this long before these things happen for the average Nigerian soldier. We do not need, anybody to give orders or to set things in motion. It should be a system that just works.
They certainly deserve more than they're getting, is what we're saying.
Absolutely.
If you look at the military in other parts of the world, there's a certain reverence that comes with being a part of the military, of being a soldier. It's almost like, oh, you're serving, you're doing this great service, such that in the event that you lose your life, you know that for a certain your family is taken care of. Yes, your family is taken care of, and you're not bothering about, my children are going to be able to school, are they going to be able to feed? There's handsome remuneration, although yes, nothing can measure for a life being lost, but I don't think that that's what's obtainable here. I was speaking with some policeman who was, ranting. I ran into him on the road, and we got into a conversation and was ranting during the election season how they were very underpaid, how there was a large sum that was disbursed for election security and it didn't get to them. Those kind of stories are really heartbreaking to hear. So like you mentioned, all the armed forces, they deserve
a lot
better than they're having.